After Dark Intimate Confessions. It's just me tonight, y'all. So it's just going to be a sort of a free form one on one. We're going to see how things go. I've got a few questions already from the Facebook and various other sites. But yeah, this is just us. We're dealing with this new format. We're dealing with the new schedule. I'm dealing with my various new lifestyle choices that I've made. So I thought that, yeah, we would forego a guest this week, and instead it would just be us, just a chance to kind of talk. I'm sort of uh, looking at this as something of an ask me anything if you happen to be on the line. Otherwise, I'm just gonna sort of ramble for a while and then leave. I'm just gonna leave you. That's how I do. That's how I roll. I've got my glass of wine. Although, as I learned the last few times I've done this, I don't actually wind up drinking much when I do the one on one because it's just me. When I have a charming guest, I listen to them talk, and as they talk, I take a sip or two. But when it's just me, I realize I mostly just use this for gesturing purposes. So I'm just going to be gesturing with this throughout the evening. So I hope you will forgive me. Uh, I guess I'll start off right away and thank you guys. Thank every single one of you who watches this, who participates in the Facebook group, who shares the show. It's this is a time of transition. I feel like I'm always going through some sort of time of transition, but that's what life is about. Life isn't static; it continues to evolve, and this is definitely one of the strongest periods of evolution that I've gone through, and one of the hardest. I'm not going to lie to you all. This is intimate confessions, after all. So I'm going to start with an intimate confession. It's really weird going down to one episode. I've taken breaks before, so it's not like oh, I need to be recording. No, I've taken breaks before, or I filled up something of a buffer, so I can go on vacation or I can travel. But to just be recording on Sundays now, to just be recording once a week, really feels strange and puts a lot of pressure on that one episode. When I'm doing three a week, I have a sort of, well, maybe Wednesdays wasn't so great, but Fridays, I felt really good about, and Monday, I think I've got some fun ideas. Now it's like, well, I really hope they like what I do on Monday because it's going to be another week before I put something else out there. And so far, it's been all right. I think the first one I did, the one looking at suicide, was I mean, that was a really difficult one, obviously, to do. Whenever I veer into really difficult subject matters, serious subject matters, it's hard because this is a comedy show, and I tend to be a somewhat irreverent comedy type person. So the idea of doing something as serious as that as fraught as that, and that people have done really badly in the past makes me nervous. And so when I went to do that, when I went to record that episode, I had to be incredibly sensitive, and I hope that what I came up with was reflected that sensitivity, reflected that I was not taking this lightly, because I'm not taking it lightly. I'm really not, and I don't want to give the sensation that that's what I'm doing. So, this is sorry, I'm now getting a weird echo on my end, so hopefully you guys aren't getting that either. Uh, this is this show has been this show has been really important for me. This has been a huge part of my life now for 7 years, and I can't imagine uh, I can't imagine not having the freedom to do what I do. And you guys give me that freedom by letting me explore topics that are not uh that are not just goofball stuff, right? Like I'm able to do a lot of goofball. I think the majority of what I do is fairly goofbally, but I am able to occasionally stretch my legs and do something that's a little different. Oh, hello. Audio is a little poppy on this end. Oh dear, we've got someone watching. Let's see. Smash. Someone is saying I should be smashing the next off a fifth of a wine and saying interview is over when the bottle is finished. I don't think I'm gonna try to do that. That would be rough. I'm hoping the audio is slightly less poppy now that I've sort of solved some of these issues. But yeah, doing Ask Lovecraft gives me a certain permission to do really interesting things, It allows me to explore fun topics, but for the most part, it's very pop cultural, right? I mean, I've talked about this before, both on this show and off the show, or rather in show, like as Lovecraft, talking about the fact that so much of what I do is answering questions about what do I think about My Little Ponies, what do I think about Transformers, and so I think those are a lot of fun to do. But when I do have the opportunity to kind of dig in on something a little deeper, and also something that reflects Lovecraft's own experience, right? I mean, if it was just Lovecraft talking about suicide in the abstract, I don't think I would have done that. I think that would have been too hard. How do I make a joke about Zoogs talking about suicide? And the answer is you don't. Instead, however, the Lovecraft was impacted by suicide, and his friendship with Robert E. Howard really uh, meant that when Robert E. Howard passed away, um, it Lovecraft was impacted and wrote about it and talked about it and had a lot to say. So I was able to take some of that and put that into uh, what what I had in the on the show. I was very fortunate because the I've collected. It was one of the best research tools I have are publications of Lovecraft's letters, and and they have these amazing footnotes and these amazing indices. And so, just going in, looking at Robert E. Howard, suicide of, okay, there we are. That I can go from there. And so you can see how he's talking and repeating a lot of his ideas in different letters with different people about how he learned about the death of his friend. And then in the collection of his letters with Robert E. Howard himself, the last section is actually his correspondence with Robert E. Howard's father. And obviously there they talk about his death and sort of what Robert was going through. So yeah, so when it came time to do that particular episode, I felt, okay, this is hard and I've been sitting on it for a while, but I have some resources. I feel like I can do this in an honest way, in a human way, not make a joke about it, and honor these two people, and at least with honesty, and deal with the subject matter in a way that is respectful. And people responded. That's been one of the best episodes I've done in a while, as far as views, as far as people enjoying it. And so I think that suggests that this is obviously a subject that impacts people, that people really think about. I know I live on a college campus, and we've been rocked by a lot of discussions surrounding suicide and self-harm, and the administration and the student body are in conversation about how do you handle this and how do you communicate this in an appropriate way. And the answers aren't easy. The answers really aren't easy. So I feel a little better that, okay, well, if entire civilizations are having difficulty handling this topic, I guess me, a guy making a show in his library, can give himself a little slack. So yeah, so that's to say, these episodes that I'm now putting out once a week, they feel more weighted, they feel more fraught, and so I'm trying to find ways to pick questions and to pick episode subjects, so that I'm still providing the same level of quality. I don't want to be going down to one a week and having it be a really crappy one a week. So we're gonna keep at it, and we're gonna continue to hopefully entertain. I've been having a lot of fun, actually. So because I'm not doing new episodes Wednesdays and Fridays, I've been having fun going back through my back catalog of 1,500 episodes and picking stuff from the past to kind of share. And usually I try to make it thematic, so when an article about my running for mayor went out there, I shared the old one about my declaring my candidacy. With HB Lovecraft Film Festival going on, I knew I had to do something with the Callahans. And then going off to Con on the Cob this weekend, I was like, well, I got to do Andy. And then I thought I might interview Andy again, and luckily he was free, so I wound up doing two Andys in a row, so 2 years apart. So that was kind of fun. You can see the Friday interview, or the classic interview from when I first really started getting involved with the con scene here in Ohio, and then yeah, literally my Monday's episode was my shoving a camera in Andy's face Saturday night, and that was a lot of fun. I really hope if you haven't watched that live show I did, that you go and do it. It's on the Appreciation Society page. I might put a link here as well, but it was so fantastic. Robert Turk, who does this character Gandersnitch the Goblin, we've done a couple of shows now together, and it is always so much fun. I never know what to expect. He's got a background in theater, he's got a background in improvisation, and so we're able to just kind of go back and forth in a really fun way. Not really sure, what to expect from each other or from the audience, but it's so much fun. And this time around, I think he got tired of putting on the prosthetics and the makeup and whatnot. So now Gandersnitch is a puppet, and so he's doing puppet work. And I had to really channel my Tim Curry and Michael Caine and make sure I was acting to the puppet and not acting to Robert. And I think I mostly did. Every now and then I caught myself looking at Robert's ear and being like, nope, nope, gotta focus on the puppet. That's my acting partner in this scene. And we had fun. The idea was it was sort of a debate, but really it was what we've done before, where we take questions from the audience and kind of bounce it back and forth. There wasn't a proper debate style of like, all right, you have 30 seconds and to rebut and the good gentleman from blah blah blah. And I think those live shows. I love live shows. I mean, that's part of why I drove 3 hours, was because I miss performing in front of a crowd. I was part of a theater company in Toronto for a number of years. I produced shows and was involved with the theater scene out there before I had children. And I really miss it. I really miss live theater. I really miss performing like that. It's funny, since coming to this college town, which has a film department, I've done more film acting and acting for the screen, which has been a lot of fun and is a very different art and very different discipline. And I have to really find exercise different muscles in whole new ways. But I haven't had a chance to really do much stage work. And there is a theater scene here. There are dueling theater companies in this small rural Ohio town. But it's different, and it's hard to do when you've got kids, and rehearsal schedules are difficult when you've got kids. That's just how it is. And so getting a chance to do these live shows, these improv shows with Robert is just an absolute treat. He is, I mean, A, he's such a performer, and B, he is really irreverent and has such a sense of character and knows what he wants to do and knows how he wants to sort of take things, and knows how to get just far enough without maybe going too far. But it's still a ton of fun. And I don't know what my next, I don't know what my next live show is going to be after that. I, of course, just did Santa Fe not too long ago, which was fantastic. Going back to the Jean Cocteau Cinema and getting to perform there. It's a great venue, and that's when I'm on my own like that, that's a different beast, because that's something I have a bit more familiarity with now, is sort of the one-on-one taking questions from the audience. It's very different from having sort of a scene partner there and trying to figure out, okay, who's going, what are you going to say? All right, I got to make sure I don't jump on your bit, and I got to make sure I call back to something you said earlier. It's a dance, and it's something that I love doing and would love to do more of. When I was in Toronto, there's a theater company, a sort of improv company, that did these great shows, and they were called Perfect Match. And they would bring actors who would play characters or historical figures or just someone, that they, some sort of stereotype, manic mom or drill sergeant, things like that. And, you would come forward, and I did H.P. Lovecraft and Carl Sagan and Paul Lynde, and you would sort of give like a little 30-second, here's who I am, audience. And then the audience would vote on who they wanted to see paired together. So you had no idea going into it. All right, I'm H.P. Lovecraft. Am I going to be talking with JFK or with the Little Mermaid? And so that was a lot of fun to take kind of a prepared character and then get thrown into a scene with a complete stranger, usually. I don't think I ever knew any of the other performers I was working with. And I didn't know their characters or how their characters were supposed to go. I mean, I knew, when I was Carl Sagan and performing opposite Little Mermaid, I knew who the Little Mermaid was, and I had to sort of think, all right, well, how would Carl Sagan take to this strange aquatic monster? And that was a great show, and I really enjoyed doing that. Here in town, what I've done that's the closest to that is these Chautauqua historical person series, where I did Lovecraft and no one knew who he was, and it was very awkward. And then did Carl Sagan, and that was very popular because people at least recognize him from television. And then I did Peter Sellers, and that was a lot of fun. People knew Peter Sellers, but it was also incredibly difficult because I sort of, during my research and during my kind of acting prep, came to hate Peter Sellers. I came to find him just a really loathsome individual. And so having to occupy his body, his corpse, for half an hour to an hour was it was hard. It was really hard. But I got through it, and now Peter Sellers is canon to the show. He has now guest starred on Ask Lovecraft. I have thought about ways to incorporate him. I don't know if I can do it without the show being completely ridiculous. I know there's a couple of fans out there who are excited by the prospect of Peter Sellers making a regular appearance, uh, but it's I don't know. It's a lot. Expect more Sagan as my hair grows out and before I get my next haircut. So yeah, so that's it. As far as live shows, I don't know of any other live shows coming up. That's going to be, I think it's probably going to be it until the end of the year, unless something special comes up. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at. We're now doing the one show a week. With the two sort of classic Lovecrafts. If you follow me on Tumblr, you'll see I always refer to them as classic. But yeah, I've had a lot of fun playing with that and figuring that out and trying to figure out the format of this new system. And amongst other changes, of course, is the fact that I'm running for mayor and I'm running unopposed for mayor, and that has created all sorts of interesting senses of expectations and questions about, all right, how precisely do I campaign when I'm running unopposed? In fact, I've had one of the questions someone sent in for this show was like, what are my policies and how am I, what's my stump speech? And I don't really have a stump speech because I'm not really, I don't have to go out on the stump. We're a small village, and it's, when the college is in session, we're pretty sizable, but a lot of the college students aren't really they don't participate a whole lot in kind of village life. I think, they're impacted by what happens at the village, but a lot of them don't realize there's kind of a village happening around them. I know when I went, this is the college that I went to, and I know when I was a student here, I had no idea that there was like an actual town with a mayor and a council. Like if you had told me that the president of the college also ran the town, I'd be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Like we used to joke about how he had a button that controlled the weather. So I mean, like that wouldn't seem that weird to us. Or if you said that the whole thing was run by the poli-sci department and different students, different senior theses picked what sort of type of government they wanted to experiment with that year. All right, guys. So this semester we're a 14th century theocracy. Next semester you're gonna have a doge. That also would have made sense to me. So we have a very intense population here. Folks who either want to live right next to a college or who have worked for the college or like me, used to attend the college and have now come back. So you've got a very involved population in rural Ohio. It's and we're a company town. And so figuring out our relationship with the company, the college, is a huge part of the identity of the town and the identity of who we are and how we sort of interact. And it creates, if there's any tension, that's where it comes from, right? And the college wants to build something. If are they tearing down a historic landmark to, build their new gym, or are they sort of getting rid of an ugly eyesore to create something that students will use that will actually, bring revenue to the village? These are the kind of conversations that we have. And it's a question of, how much do you allow the college to define who we are, and how much do we sort of define the college, because they're, we're existing in hopefully a symbiotic relationship. And so part of what I'm interested in is maintaining that symbiosis, looking to the future, figuring out ways to make the village more livable, to attract more people who want to live here. Like everywhere, there's housing issues that have to be taken into account. There's environmental issues, where Ohio is in the midst of kind of going back and forth about what it's doing about green initiatives and renewable energy. And as the state kind of dithers, a lot of local municipalities are, doing the work and saying, all right, we're going to start cutting emissions. We're going to start looking at how we can increase renewable energy, how we can maintain less and less dependence on fossil fuels. And I think that's a part of a conversation I definitely want to have. Same thing goes with LGBT rights right now. Obviously, there's a huge national conversation taking place with the Supreme Court. But also, again, here in Ohio, there's been a question about, what protections are in place as far as discrimination. And the state, again, kind of is shrugging, which leaves it up to localities, municipalities, villages, and cities to kind of decide, all right, well, we're going to create ordinances that go up against discrimination, or we're going to establish, the that we respect the rights of all people. And again, I think those are really important things that people can ignore and not realize are happening so close to home. You know, the fact that I'm running unopposed, is really weird. But it's also, in some way, a kind of an indictment of how little people pay attention to local politics. I keep joking. If an H.P. Lovecraft impersonator can run for mayor, can become mayor. Uh, like what other things are people ignoring? We always joke about the dog catcher and truant officer and things like that. But there are tons of ways to get involved locally, to get involved close to home that have real impact and don't have really huge barriers of entry. And if nothing else, going to local council meetings, going to local school board meetings, you realize just how much is happening there. It's not all about what happens at the White House. It's not about what happens at the State House. State houses also get incredibly ignored at our peril. I should also warn people. Pay attention to what's happening there, because a lot of bad things can happen there, as we're saying. So yeah, I think if nothing else, if I have a platform, if I have a stump, it's get involved. It's find a way to pitch in. Democracy is not a spectator sport. It's democracy is a dog. You have to walk it every day, and it's so vital. Oh, someone's saying San Francisco. San Francisco, not a tiny community, has 3 municipal posts running unopposed this year. So, like, is everything in San Francisco happening honky-dorily and there's nothing that needs changing? I mean, I imagine there are a few ideas that could probably be thrown into the midst to help, talking about housing, talking about how we work with marginalized people. So yeah, like, it doesn't have to be a small rural community. You can find things and ways to pitch in, almost anywhere. I know there was the story of, I think, someone in Philadelphia who happened to see there was some position on a ballot that didn't have any candidates, and so as a joke wrote themselves in and voted for themselves, and they won and were like, on some random board that no one else thought to run for. And again, that's where a lot of things happen. A lot of government happens at the really small level, and if you ignore it at your own peril. And so I'm really excited about the opportunity to be involved, the opportunity to educate, and to be educated myself. I'm still really new at this, right? Like, I ran for office in 2017. It's funny, around November of 2016, suddenly politics became really important. People started paying a lot of attention to it. I joined a planning and zoning commission, and I learned a great deal about my community just from there. The power of the zoning board, and the codes, and how they're written or how they're not written or how they were written in 1985. These have huge impacts. And then going from there to being on council, where I've seen how we're dealing with our water, how we're dealing with how our water gets treated, the health of the community, how we're spending our resources, what we're doing to partner with the county as far as looking at addiction and addiction services. Like, there's whatever issue you have, whether it's the environment, whether it's addiction, whether it's, even, major issues that affect, things nationally and internationally. You can have some impact on a small level, and they all build on each other. So yeah, if I have a platform, it's get involved. If I can do it, so can you. Like, if I had anything on my posters, that's what it would be. There are some students around here who want me to print up buttons that say HP Lovecraft is my mayor. So we'll see. Maybe that's I don't know. I don't want to get into weird, like, campaign merch, like, ethics violations. So I have to be very careful about how I blend my creative endeavor, for which I am paid, and my political machinations. So yeah, so that's kind of what's happening there. The candidacy is continuing. I'm still I'm not mayor elect yet. I will presumably, if at least one person votes for me, I will be elected in November. I'm calling myself either the mayor presumed, or I really like mayor apparent. I think that that has a lot of fun ring to it. But even then, there's now these sort of I feel like there's some additional scrutiny being placed on me that wouldn't necessarily be there in an election, or at least it would be different in an election, right? Because then I could kind of compare and contrast myself with a candidate and be like, well, candidate X wants to eat babies, and I, for one, I think we should at least do some research into eating babies and whether that's best for the community. Uh, but when it's just me, I really have to kind of think about, yeah, what are my values? What do I think is important for a community? And you know, people being treated fairly and not destroying our planet and creating space for people to actually live and who want to be a part of this community. Like that's a huge part of what I'm going for. That, and I would love a gazebo, but I think that's more of a pet project than anything. That's my monorail. Is I think our village could use a nice central gazebo just to really establish a sense of place. And let me think, what else is happening? Oh, I wanted to. I'm finally reading some Stephen King. It's a long running gag. If folks used to listen to my old Miskatonic Music podcast, that I did not ever read Stephen King, except for like the few stories we would read for the podcast. So instead of actually reading one of his like fiction books, the first one I'm really digging into is his On Writing, and I'm enjoying it so far. There's a lot of, I mean, I've known about some of this stuff, like his addiction issues and things like that. But just, seeing his where he's coming from and what his family life was like is really fascinating. And to see, I'm always interested in, great men and the women in their lives and sort of the emotional labor that oftentimes doesn't get recognized. Although he's pretty good about it. Like he actually, he's not just like, my wife supported me. Like, I mean, there's some of that, but I mean, he at least references that she's doing a lot of the work, and a lot of her own kind of literary aspirations took a second, sort of a back seat. And I that's more than a lot of people do. Yeah, a lot of people just sort of like assume that they are owed this level of support. As someone with a very supportive wife who has had the patience and the goodwill to tolerate all this Lovecraft business for 7 years, and who is now tolerating my going into politics. Oh, I hear my daughter. Oh, okay. So that might be signaling that things are wrapping up here. So but I absolutely understand the importance of respecting the people in our lives who support us, especially spouses, partners, people who treat us well. All right, I think a crying child signifies that this is it for the show. So this has been Intimate Confessions. There is nothing more intimate than sad children. Amanda, would you like to come here? Would you like to come into the library? Here, why don't you come to the library, Amanda? Someone asked if a goblin would guest star, and I guess the answer is maybe. Here, Amanda, why don't you come into the library? Can you come into the library? Can you come into the library, Amanda? She may not come into the library. She might be too distraught. A bee landed on her earlier today, and it's been sort of a problem. Amanda, would you like to come into the library? Would you like to come into the library? You can come into the library, please. Okay, I think I'm just going to say that's it. Come into the library. Come into the library, Lovecraft says. That's not the... not how I was planning on ending the show, but there you go. Sometimes that's what happens. I want to thank everyone for watching. I want to thank everyone for supporting this show, for being a part of this strange journey that I've been going on. Thank you all. I wouldn't be able to do this without you. So we'll be back in a few weeks. So Ross Lockhart, I believe, is next on the list. And keep watching this space. If this is your first time watching, I don't always have a crying child in the background. That's not... a standard part of the show. That's just something special for tonight. But if you enjoy the show, if you enjoy my Lovecraft silliness, you can go to asklovecraft.com, where you can watch all 1,500 episodes of the show, including the new episodes coming out every Monday. If you want to know more about live shows once they actually are happening, you can go to lehmankessler.com. If you want to hear me screaming into the void, you can go to Twitter at Twitter / Lehman Kessler or Ask Lovecraft. Both of them are there. I do less screaming as Ask Lovecraft. And if you support the show and you want to keep my children in shoes and warm pajamas, you can do so at patreon.com/asklovecraft. Thank you all so much. I'm going to go take care of my poor daughter. Bye, all.